Hi, it's Matthew, and we are about to embark on a great conversation today for our Reserved for Vets podcast. 5 listener comments and questions, all surrounding everything from PTSD to psychedelics to environment to it's going to be a great conversation today. I want to remind you that one of our foundational partners has been ASI-AV from the very beginning. I know this woman-owned AV company can get it done for you. They've been doing this for 20 years. Corporate build-outs, courtrooms, schools, ASI-AV.com for their gallery of work. Let's jump into today's podcast. We've got Reserved for Vets back on the stream. We're live on our YouTube channels, both Learn from People Who Lived It and at Mental Joe. And I went ahead and I've got us streaming on our Facebook page today too. So if you're checking in from anywhere, today's show is absolutely with you in mind because we've got a series of questions that we're going to rifle through and answer today, and then we welcome anything that you have in the comments as you're checking us out. Quick round the horn. I'm Matthew. To my top right there, that's Dr. Dave. Tell him what you do.
I am a psychiatrist. I've been a psychiatrist for about 25 years, and I specialize in trauma and post-traumatic stress.
And then the guy in the bottom right, he shared a couple of cool pictures with me that I'm going to share with everybody in a sec. But talk about your situation, Chad.
Yeah, Chad McLean here, former Army veteran. We have an apparel line called Mental Joe, where we're using our apparel line that will be privately labeled and dirt to shirt, as you can see there, and made in America. So all of our apparel will be made here in America. And from that, we're going to take the proceeds and launch those proceeds and profits into organizations that help with mental health on the non-traditional sense. So that's kind of our goal and our mission. And we kind of just started this past April. So
love it, man. Love it, love it, love what you're doing. And we'll talk about this on the podcast today. But Netflix has a new special out called How to Open Up Your Mind. Have you heard of it?
I've watched it all. Fantastic.
Oh, you have? Okay. Have you not seen it? It's just incredible, Dr. Dave. And it's this guy. His name is Michael Paulin, maybe? Michael something?
Yeah, Michael Paulin. He actually, for a very long time, Michael Paulin, sorry, I'm adjusting my chair here. Michael Paulin was actually a... I'm going to screw up the verbiage. Herbologist. I know he studies plants.
Right.
So he, for a very long time, was in the agriculture world. Wrote, about farming and things of that nature, and they came upon plant medicines and kind of discovered them himself. And he wrote a book called How to Change Your Mind. Right. And so the series on Netflix is based off of his book.
It's cool. Just every episode, he's going through a different plant and, slash psychedelic, and he's talking about how we can use it. And he's got all these doctors on and all these psychiatrists on, and he does studies and he does it himself. And it's really well produced. And I think, it's one of those things, obviously, that comes up on our podcast from time to time. But today we all decided that we wanted to go down this road of helping people out with the questions that they have. And so with a quick Google search today, you'll if you say, what are the top items facing veterans today in 2022, the internet and about 5 or 7 articles all have common threads. Let me go through these. They say unemployment is the biggest thing, followed by relationship with themselves, followed with homelessness, followed by physical handicaps, followed by poor mental health. It doesn't matter what website you poke around online. Those are the top 5 things that are impacting veterans. And obviously our stream is called Reserved for Vets. And this is the conversation that we want to have surrounding these items. And so in some way, shape, or form, we're going to go through all of these things with the questions, guys. But one of the things that I have to tell you shocked the ever-loving hell out of me when I was looking up some of the stuff online today was that there's 38,000 homeless vets right now. And I don't know why. But gosh, it feels like a high number to me. And I can only imagine there's a myriad of reasons for it. But I was really surprised to see homelessness make that list of the top 5. So I'll come to you in a second, Chad. But Dr. Dave, you've been in the space for 2 decades. Are you surprised to see homelessness on the top 5 list?
No, I'm not, unfortunately.
Or maybe not shocked is a better way to put it.
Yeah, homelessness is a problem for a bunch of reasons. For one thing, if we're talking about post-traumatic stress, there's going to be a tendency toward isolation and withdrawal anyway. Now, usually people can, remain in their space in an apartment or a house and not end up homeless. But then when you add to that alcohol and drug addiction and on top of the isolation and maybe other psychiatric conditions as well as PTSD, severe depression, but I think probably the biggest thing is addiction as leading to homelessness.
Yeah, because as you put it, and you reminded us a couple of months ago, you said that alcohol turns off the part of the brain that cares. And so just in case anybody's joining us for the first time and has never heard that before, do you mind just kind of briefly touching on what's going on in the brain?
Yeah, well, alcohol is a sedative. In the short term, it can take away anxiety, right? So anybody that's had a drink or two knows that they generally feel calmer afterwards. And so if you're dealing with untreated symptoms and you don't know what to do with it, if you have a couple of drinks, it'll take the edge off. It'll help you to feel a little bit calmer if you're feeling anxious and tense, or if you haven't slept in several days. The trade-off, though, is as your body gets used to it, and as you need to drink more and more to get some of the same effects, you cross this invisible line where you're no longer in control of how much you're using. And so other people may see it. If you have people that care about you, they may comment, or they may worry about you that you're drinking too much. But for you, the person who's consuming the alcohol to control symptoms, you don't know generally when you've crossed that line until you try to stop. And at that point, then it's too late. Either you start to go into withdrawal, or you'll find that, you try to go a day or two without drinking and you just can't manage with it anymore. So being able to stop them becomes something that you're not able to do without outside help.
Yeah, because it becomes difficult regarding what words you're going to choose to use to get the conversation started. And then there's the kryptonite, right? Then nothing ever happens. Chad, did you ever have an issue with alcohol? Because I'm a former alcoholic who set it down in 2006. But I don't know about your relationship with booze and its relation to your PTSD.
Yeah, I mean, in my younger days, I drank like a fish, right? I think a lot of it started off socially. I played competitive softball, and with competitive softball, you go to the bar, and before you know it, that Friday night turns into a Saturday night, and then that Saturday night turns into a Tuesday, penny beer night. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, probably like any younger person, I had my fair share. My dad had an issue with it, so I was very cognizant of it. Yeah. Probably when I was out of the military, drink way too much for sure, popping the pain pills and everything else to make things go away. But it was an issue, because it caused bar fights, things of that nature. But it wasn't like I woke up and I had to have a handle, in my hand to drink the day away, and function, But yeah, I think it's the first thing a lot of veterans go to because they know the norm of it, right? They know they can hammer back a 30-pack with another dude in 2 hours in the barracks, or, drink a keg with a squad of guys. It's pretty quick to do that. So it's a familiar thing to do.
And there's another piece of this too, where true addiction tends to be hereditary. And so there's a lot of people, and I'm sure you can think of at least dozens of people that you grew up with that, maybe hit it hard when they were in their teens and 20s. And then, once they had responsibilities, just kind of put it down, became social drinker, and never had problems with it after that. Yeah. But for some people, there is a true addiction where even if they're intending to not drink, they lose control of it. And then they're not going to get anywhere without outside help.
Yeah, no, that's true for so many people. Let's jump into a couple of questions, guys, and don't be afraid to go off into tangents. I don't think any of this is set in stone, but a question from Carla. She wanted to know, and I bet you saw this all the time, Dave, and I'd love to know your opinion on it too, Chad. But she says, my son won't advocate for himself, and he won't let us help him much either. Any advice? I gotta imagine that's something you run into all the time, only as a guy who was down that road myself and didn't want much help. So jump in, whoever wants to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll take it from the son part. You know, I know there was a time, like I said, when I was drinking and still popping pills to get rid of the back pain, just fucking civilian pain in general, right? A lot of us, once we leave service, I think I probably had 2 or 3 years where I was walking in recruiter's office probably every other month because I was like, yeah, I can't do the civilian shit. But I think it comes to giving yourself that grace and the ability to know that you need the help, you know, and try to advocate for yourself. You know, it really didn't hit home for me that I needed to go get help or see what was going on until a couple close friends said something, right? My mom would be like, God, you're an asshole. Or she'd be so angry. And I was like, you don't know, you don't understand. Just, you know, essentially bug off, you know? But when I realized that it was starting to affect relationships outside of like family, like on the softball field or, you know, things of that nature, then I really was like, okay, I've got a problem here. I've got to address this. I've got to advocate. I've got to be a better person. So I think having that support group and knowing yourself and when help is needed. You know?
Yeah. I think the heartbreaking part of that question is you can't help somebody that doesn't want to be helped.
Yeah.
So no matter what you do, you know, even if you have a family intervention and force somebody into treatment, you know, it's for your own good and you have to do this. You know, you're just killing yourself and I can't bear to watch you do this to yourself. If the person is not willing to go along with it, they may sit out a couple weeks in a program. And if they're not invested in their own recovery and they're not invested in doing well for themselves and want to do it, they're going to go right back into their old patterns. And it, you know, for a lot of people, when it comes to addiction, it takes a few solid tries before you finally get to the point where you're fully committed to it. And you have to hit bottom sometimes. I mean, for some people, hitting bottom is enough to see the pain in their family's eyes and say, okay, you know, I can see what this is doing to other people. And, you know, maybe I don't quite see it, but I see how I'm hurting other people. You know, for some people that's bottom enough, but for some people it's not until they get arrested or they've lost everything or they've, you know, lost a relationship that's bottom enough where they're willing to do something about it. And getting help with addiction is, you know, and for a lot of people it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and you make slow progress and it takes a while before it finally sticks.
I think both.
And for family, it's hard. It's really crushing.
Well, and the only thing that I was going to offer up in terms of advice is usually people don't advocate for themselves because they don't feel worthy of the fixing and the help. And that's just the damn truth. So my advice would almost be to find ways to show him or her that they are worthy of it, that they do deserve it. And, you know, maybe try to, I don't know if that's language, Dr. Dave, I don't know what that is, Chad, but I you know, don't you agree? You have to find some way of convincing them that they're worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I you know, like I said, I piggyback off a lot of stuff Dr. Dave said. I think it comes down to, I really didn't realize how bad what I was doing was affecting people until it reached, I guess you'd say, the outer limits of, you know, almost people that I would almost consider acquaintances, right? They weren't really friends. They were just around every once in a while. And when they were around once in a while, they look at you and, God, you're a prick. And you're like, oh shit, maybe I need to take notice of this and go figure it out. So,
you know, I think as a family member, you want to be supportive. You always want to keep the door open. But there's a fine line sometimes between being supportive and being enabling, you know, so kind of the way I draw that line is if your intervention is doing nothing more than shielding the person of the natural consequences of their bad decisions, then it's not ultimately helping them, right? So if you're, they spent all their money on booze and drugs, and now they're going to get evicted from their apartment because they haven't paid the rent in 3 months, and you pay the rent for them to keep them from being thrown out, but they're not doing anything different with their drinking or drug use. All you're doing is shielding them from a natural consequence. You haven't done anything to really get them out of the situation. Or by contrast, like a positive example would be if somebody lost their license because of DUIs and they need a ride to get to a 12-step program. Okay, I'll drive you there every day of the week if I have to, right? Because that's helping move you along in your recovery, right? So, and that can be very tough. I know a lot of parents, when they're looking at their kids struggling, they just want to do anything that they can to help them. But I think you have to be careful that what you're doing is not just allowing them to continue in the self-destructive patterns.
Steve's got our next question. It makes a lot of sense that we go to you on it, Chad. But he says, I never really recovered from my PTSD. So I want to talk about that first. But then he says, what else is out there besides meds and talk therapy? And so I want to start first with, I never really recovered from the PTSD. I like the way that Dr. Dave has explained this week after week after week after week, which is it's on your permanent record. So get over this idea that you're going to that it's going away and it's never going to, creep back into your life on some levels. Anybody want to argue with me there? Yeah. Okay, so then we can get to the next part of that thing, which is, what else is out there? And Chad, it's the very thing that your apparel line is founded on. Yeah. And it kind of is about, there's a little bit of this documentary that we were talking about up front, but what else is out there? What else is out there for people that have tried the traditional too and are looking for something different?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously right in my wheelhouse, and I'm still a novice in understanding all the different plant medicines that are out there. And it's why we have partnered with a group called VETS, which is Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. They really, really have done a good job of conducting themselves in a manner to create a very strong foundation. And what I mean by that is having, whether you want to call them shamans or medicine people, within the right scope of medicine that they're sending these veterans with, severe issues with PTSD, of TBI, depression, anxiety, all this stuff. And again, I think, that people could probably argue both sides of, again, me doing ketamine. But I always say it's really hard to argue with someone that's gone through the process and knows how they were prior and where they are now. And I'm one of those individuals. It literally, ketamine saved my life. I did the talk therapy. I've done the popping pills for 20 plus years, and I can't get there, right? Just can't get there. Ketamine was the next step. So ketamine it's changed my life, but like anything else, it's a tool, right? I don't want people to ever think like if they go down the non-traditional sense of plant medicines that it's a cure-all. You still have got to put in the work. Like I said, PTSD is still going to be there. It's still going to be a daily fight. But now those nerve endings and those neural pathways aren't so shot to shit, right? There's different ways of thinking now because you've introduced some different plant medicines.
Well, and it's worth mentioning too that, not everybody's going to feel comfortable even going down that road, right? And yep. I have, as a guy who practices meditation, I do transcendental meditation, right? And when I was going through my TM training, they were blowing TM up about how much it can do for PTSD and about how they're teaching it now at West Point and about how now soldiers are being taught TM in certain locations so that they can deal with the PTSD. And that's free. That's something that all of us have right here, right now, right? Our breath. It's always with us. And the cool thing about transcendental meditation is that if you're a veteran, it's really super inexpensive to learn it. TM works on a scale, right? They're almost like the government that way, where it's like the more you make, the more you pay. But they offer it to veterans at a very reduced rate. I remember getting it for my brother, who we've talked about suffers from PTSD, and it changed the game for him for a long time. And so I know that power of breath can also be something else to look at for people that don't want to jump down psychedelics or have reservations about them or whatever that's going to be. I'm going to tell you another thing, and I'd love to know what you think about this, Dave, or if you know anything about it. But I've been doing a little bit of research lately on CBD because we're starting to break down CBD now into CBG, CBN, and we're kind of coming up with these subcategories of the plant, and we're learning some really interesting things about how CBG can kind of lift us up, and about CBN can kind of help us sleep, and they're all parts of the plant. But have you been fairly impressed by some of the stuff you've seen regarding CBD? Have you done much looking into it at all?
I've seen it work pretty well for people that are having trouble with chronic pain issues.
Yeah.
But not breaking it down into subtypes. You're a bit ahead of me on that.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wanted to piggyback off, Matthew, just if we could go back a tad bit, is
Sure.
even, we don't make mention of it, but Dr. David Berselli was on a couple weeks ago, and the meditation that you're talking about, kind of the same thing as TRE. One of my goals is
a great example. Another modality that doesn't involve medicine. Right.
Yep. And we actually found a home for TRE. So starting August 16th, where Mental Joe is going to start facilitating some TRE sessions. So I'll give you a heads up on those. So if you want to come shake and check it out,
I want to try it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll have that on the website. So same thing, TRE really opened me up to the holistic side or a non-traditional side of, the mental health, and TRE is a great tool. So we're happy to have a home for that, to introduce that to veterans and people that are going through some of this stuff.
And here's one more option: the ice plunge, which Dr. Dave just did last week, man. I can't believe you got into the water.
I tried doing the cold plunge.
What did you think about it?
Well, I kind of went in halfway.
Okay.
I went in up to my knees, which was cold enough. The water was like 50 degrees, and man, was it cold. But when you do it usually they have you do it in cycles. So you do hot, cold, hot, cold. And by about the second or third time that you've gone through it, it does become a bit easier. You get your courage a bit to go a little deeper with it.
Have you done it, Chad?
I have, and so obviously us three are here in the Valley of Arizona, Phoenix, every winter, and I want to get one where I can actually build it and do it during the summertime, because you can actually build these out of old deep freezes. But in the wintertime, because our pool is so cold, our pool gets below 50 degrees, I will cold plunge every day all winter long. And I freaking love it. And I try to stay in for at least 3 to 4 minutes.
Oh, wow.
I had a buddy that came down from Montana last year, and we jumped in at wintertime, and he's like, he's like, I'm going to have a freaking heart attack. What the hell do you do? So I started showing him all these cold plunge people on Instagram that I follow. And he's like, holy shit, dude, this is a whole community. I'm like, amazing. Yeah, it's wild.
What's going on in the brain that's effective, Dave? Do you understand that?
No, that's not something I've looked at. This is kind of new for me. Yeah.
I would have to believe that it has a lot to do with what they call the amygdala hack these days, right? Where it forces you into a different part of your brain, I would guess.
I'll send it to both of you, but I forget his name, but I follow him. They call him
Iceman?
Iceman. There you go. You know who
Dude,
exactly
I love Iceman.
Yeah. And he's all about breath work. And you can see this guy jumping in Alaska, cutting ice and then jumping in right after he cuts a freaking cube of ice out, man. So, I mean, it's got to be working, because he's got clientele flying through.
I love it. Laura says she's heard about successful. I've seen Tony Robbins is a guy who has a cold plunge and gets in it every morning, and that's how the day starts, according to his documentary.
Let's get on. Stressor, it has to release adrenaline and other stress hormones, but under circumstances that you control.
Yeah.
Rogan does it. Joe Rogan does it every morning. He does a cold plunge, and then he goes to a dry hot sauna, cold plunge, dry hot sauna, and he rotates. There's a ton of people that do it, but some of the systems out there are a nice cold plunge, you're looking at $10, $12 grand for a nice one.
Damn.
Yeah.
I'll jump in my pool in the winter.
Yeah, pool in the winter. That's why I've done it. Cheap.
All right. This is a tough question. Jack hit us up and he said, my problem has always been civilian life and how unstructured it is. What kinds of things can I do that have a similar structure to military life? I don't have much ammo here, but I'll let you guys jump in. Dave, go ahead.
I think the challenge there is for a lot of people, they get into the military around 18, so the time in their life when their civilian counterparts are going out, making mistakes, trying to figure out how to structure their unstructured life, starting out with a new career, and kind of making all those mistakes early on, they eventually figure it out. So if you start off at 18 in the military and the structure is presented to you, and let's say you even do a career and you get out in your 40s or so, that's all you've known up until that point. So to come up with structure on your own is a skill that you haven't had to learn on your own, or you've not been through the paces to make your mistakes and figure it out. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, obviously I've been out for a while now and I've had time to kind of figure things out, though I've tripped several times along the way.
Several thousand times, right?
Yeah, several thousand. To be accurate. Could be closer to 100. Right. But, same thing, I mean, I literally, and I've talked to buddies about it. And I mean, even guys that went to college first and then went in the military and then got back out. I have a buddy that's an attorney over in LA, and he thought for the 5, 6, at least 10 years after he got out of the service, he was going to go back in. I mean, every veteran, I think, has that because you're so used to the, you call it the 3 hot in a cot, right? When chow is, when you're sleeping, when you get up and you do PT, your training is all scheduled out for you. And it's already been budgeted by the CO and your LTs know what the hell is going on every single day. So you just show up, man. You just show up and do whatever the hell they tell you and you're good. Then you go into corporate America and it's, as we all know, it is a massive shit show. Red tape everywhere. No one really knows what they're doing, but they're getting through it. It's, I think that's why you see so many veterans probably go into fields, the police or, firefighters and stuff, right? Because there's a brotherhood there. There's still some kind of a structure or hierarchy that they're very familiar with.
Yeah.
I went the other route. I tried doing the police thing. It never really spoke to me. But
my brother had the same experience. I think he flirted with it. And it was just like, I don't know. Even tried like corrections. It was like, I don't know.
Yep, exactly.
But those are tough industries, right? Because I would almost imagine that becoming a cop would kind of maybe even trigger some things that might not be so pleasant.
It can. Yep. I was going to say it sure can. Yeah. I think you see that out there in the news today, right? On some of that stuff that happens, unfortunately.
Yeah. For some people it works, and for some people it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a long career in radio, and one of the partnerships that one of the companies I worked for was this website called Show Your Stripes, and I'm almost positive they're still in existence. But what I loved about this website, Show Your Stripes, and you might be able to Google it, and I apologize if they've shut down. But while they were open, and if they are still open, they were incredible because what you were able to do, it was basically a military translation website for the corporate world. And so you would go in and you would list your rank in the Army, all of the things that you did in the Army, and then this program was written so it would go, all right, let me translate that. Here's what you write down on a resume. Here's what your skills are going to be in corporate America. And I just remember it being a really great asset in terms of literally translating the skills into what should I write on a resume. So I might throw that out there too, that could be useful in a job search too, or at least a how-to. And
trying to find a job now, if we're talking about finding a job as being the structure that people are looking for, when we were all younger, you get a lead on a job, you send over a resume. At some point, you're making a phone call and talking to somebody who's a decision maker. At some point, you're shaking hands with somebody that's a decision maker. and you have an opportunity to plead your case to that person and put your best foot forward. Now the resumes are submitted, they're scanned, they're tabulated, they're scored by computers. People put out hundreds of resumes and never make contact with a single human being. It's a very different thing, and it's if you don't know how to write a resume that breaks through the algorithm, you're really at a disadvantage.
Well, that's one thing I'm hoping, as there's more clarity around mental health with veterans and so forth, I'm hoping that the military or the government implements some kind of a better program as you come out of the military. And meaning, for instance, for me, right, I was in Ranger Battalion. Then after I hurt my back, I was just a regular grunt, right? So if I was to put anything on a resume, I could go work a gun range. I could go be a mercenary. I could go maybe be a bodyguard when I got out. Other than that, I got no skill sets, and I'm jumping out of planes and I'm blowing shit up. Right. So my hope would be you get into combat arms or something like that. On the backside of your contract, there's 6 months worth of counseling and resume writing and understanding the corporate world. And I know there's corporations out there that recruit veterans very specifically, but, get in touch with these corporations. And maybe that, okay, infantry people or combat arms are really good in these set jobs, and you've got recruiters that are just grabbing left and right. Or if you got someone that's in a different MOS, so I'd like to see that be a little bit better as people come out, because it's
like a transition program almost.
Yeah. I mean, you sign up and there's your contract. You should have like a 6-month transition on the backside where that's it. You show up in civilian clothes, you go do civilian things, you get your health in order, you do mental checkups weekly. And I don't think there's a full program. I know when I got out, it was, here's your duffel bag, go buy your own plane ticket, and there's the front gate. Right. I got a ride to the airport from one of my buddies, flew home to Montana, and I sat on my mom's couch for probably 2 months. I didn't know what the hell to do. I didn't know what my next steps were.
In my experience dealing with folks with PTSD is they can't work a traditional job. The structure of it just doesn't work for them.
Nope.
So entrepreneurship can be very useful. If you can figure out something that you're good at and you can make a business around it, you can ride your ups and downs based on the fact that you run the business, right? So let's say you have a bad dream, you're up at 3 a.m, and you're not going back to sleep. You could work for a while, get your mind off of things for a bit. A lot of traditional jobs are not going to support that. They want you there, 9 to 5. You got to be on your game for that period of time, and it's just too structured. People can't do it.
Well, good point, and I'll piggyback off that is, same thing I had this last month or so, right? Again, I'm only a couple months into the Mental Joe launch stuff. This last couple of weeks have been rough on me. I didn't know where to go. I had all these things lined up, and I'm waiting on Peter and Paul and everybody else to make this train go. And so I didn't have any other structure, right? Ended up having someone hack into my Google account and tried erasing all my domains that I own, including Mental Joe. Yeah. So figured all that out. And what am I doing? I'm up at 9 at night, and I didn't, I worked straight through till 5 o'clock the next day. Had an hour of sleep, and I just clocked it out. But
wow.
Dr. Dave said, you can't do that if you're working your 9 to 5. To where something's stressing me out, I just sit down and grind through it until we figure it the F out, and it was, the last 2 weeks have been a mess, but we got it figured out. But I piggyback on that comment big time with Dr. Dave.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of faith that the government is going to find a solution for it. I think, somehow trying to find a way to enlighten businesses that want to work with veterans or help with veterans to kind of create the environment that would help them to thrive. And then you also have a problem too with people that are disabled. You could be 100% disabled at age 30, and you have a lot of years ahead of you, a lot of hours to fill in the day, and if you don't have something productive and something to enjoy and look forward to, it's very hard to fight off depression in that environment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, let's wind down with the last. It's not really so much of a question, but a comment. Bob said the thing that helped me was changing my environment. I had a few people in my life that were vampires, and my job wasn't stimulating. I had too much time to think, and I think that's a great little anecdote that he puts on the end there. Is like, it sounds like you maybe got some sort of mind-numbing job, but it literally just put him in a space where he could think all day, and that wasn't very helpful. But I'd love all of us to jump in, and Dave, you can start, but the importance of changing your environment sometimes. Go ahead. I'll tell you what I think in a minute.
Yeah. So in the process of understanding PTSD and understanding your particular issues, what triggers you, what you need to get through the day, as you get to know yourself better, you can start to think about what type of environment helps to support what you need. So I think that's an important piece of it. And yes, definitely changing an environment can be a game changer overall in terms of your mental outlook, feeling positive, feeling productive, actually getting things done. Dealing with toxic people or toxic environments. It's just one more drain on top of the other things that are draining you to begin with.
Right.
Yeah, I concur on all that. Same thing. I was in the corporate America world for 20 years. Just this past April, Mental Joe's been kind of, cooking some stuff up on the back end. And we're finally at a point within our family's life that we could, take a chance at this, jump at it and see if we could make this thing happen. Because the wife makes pretty good money and, it's like, hey, if we're going to take a shot at this, let's do it now. So to leave the environment, totally agree. I had to change the environment. Every time I would log into work, I just was mad. I hated it because it was so easy to me. Like I could literally be done at noon working because I could get every task, nailed out that they needed to me. And then I had to sit around and stare at my damn computer screen for another 5 hours.
Wait for an email.
Exactly. So, I think changing the environment, getting away from toxic people, understanding what those triggers were. And I started looking at that, and when I would get into work, I could feel my body almost like change, like clay, something else was being molded. It's just like it felt gross, and I was like, I got to get out of this. Like it just.
You know what though? But I want to throw this in there, and I talk about this all the time with my buddy Chris Paul, who does more like weight loss, right? Because the conversation that I have with him is, what do you do if you're trying to lose weight and your wife wants to keep eating ho-hos, right? And so, let's bring that into this world, right? Like, what do you do if you're really kind of reaching for an answer? But your wife or your husband or your mom or your dad, like they're just kind of the vampires. It's a really difficult thing to want to say, I have to walk away. I have to remove myself from my family right now for my own sake. But critically worth it if you think long term. How do you feel about that, Dave?
Yeah. Take family in measured doses.
Yes.
It's harder if it's a spouse, right? Because, and if you're talking about like weight loss and dealing with a spouse, because you're going to be sharing meals together, and sharing meals is an important bonding time with families. And, and if you're completely on different pages in terms of what you're eating and what you're trying to do, what your goals are, that's a real challenge. I don't have an easy answer for that one.
Well, Chris takes care of that one, but I mean more on the mental health side where we're, like you say, you got some vet who's paying attention to us right now, and they're really they're motivated to try to make some changes, but maybe the people around them are still calling them weak all the time, or get your sheet. They're using the old verbiage that you've talked about before, Chad. Like, pull up your bootstraps, get your shit together. Man, come on.
For me, I pop smoke. And a lot of veterans will understand that. I pop smoke. I literally cut everybody off. Mm-hmm. I cut family off. I cut friends off. And I literally just put my head in the sand and said, we got to figure this out. Because I was either going to kill myself, or I was going to be a miserable human being until I killed myself. I had to shut everybody out because I didn't want anybody else's opinions, thoughts, perceptions. I just did it.
Right.
And I'm sure I pissed a lot of people off, but
I doubt it, man. I think people in this capacity, sometimes they recognize what's going on and they almost applaud our ability to dive in and focus on ourselves. Don't you think that, Dave?
Yeah. And maybe you need to do that for a period of time. Right. So you and I guess this kind of ties in with the sobriety thing too. You know, you may need to cut all ties with everybody that you've known just to get your sobriety under your belt and just to get, you know, working your 12 steps and to figure out like how to get through the day without drinking. You know, when it comes to toxic relationships, you know, cutting ties may be useful for a period of time. And then when you feel like you have a good routine, then maybe selectively invite some people back into your life again, you know, and then you could try it out. So if you make contact with somebody and then they're just bringing you down, then you got to cut that tie again.
Well, it's, you know, it's for me coming out with my mental health struggles and then launching Mental Joe. It was almost a way for me to kind of put like little nuggets out to people to see who was really paying attention, who was really supportive. And holy shit, is it amazing on how many people that were, I guess you'd almost, if you drew a circle, you know, families close and you branch out. I have a lot of acquaintances that are now here because they were watching.
They brought people to the party.
It brought a lot of people to the party. I've got 4 or 5 guys I check in with weekly now because of all this. And we talk about, you know, just, you know, being better husbands and fathers and what issues they're going through. And is it a commonality amongst, you know, men in my age group with the age group of kids and things of that nature. So, you know, it was cool to kind of see it hurt in a couple contexts because you see some people that you expect that you should get support from and you're not getting that support. So you're kind of like, middle fingers to the air and walk away. But at the same point where I'm at in life, hey, no worries, man. I love you from afar. You don't support me. That's cool. I got you. No worries.
But, you know, Chad, you're bringing up an interesting paradox with this, right? So a lot of times people think a weakness is a weakness, right? And they want to hide it from people and they want to keep it to themselves and struggle through it until they, you know, figure it out. And if they don't figure it out, then they just continue to struggle. You know, but sometimes something that you might perceive as a weakness, if you just plow forward and lead with it, all of a sudden now it becomes a strength, and it becomes a strength that draws other people in that can learn from your struggle. And so now what you viewed initially as a liability is now something that's being used to help other people along in their journey.
Yeah. And one thing I want to reshare too is I think I've always kind of said like everybody's trauma is different, right? Everyone has different thresholds. I just started listening to a new podcast. He's a former Navy SEAL and a CIA operative. His name is Sean Ryan. He has a Sean Ryan show, and he goes through it. And he also did psychedelics and got himself on this side of, you know, the PTSD mountain, if you will. There was something almost directly what you said, Dr. Dave, of, you know, he essentially told people, stop comparing yourself and your trauma to other people. Like we all have our own stories. He's a Navy SEAL and has this trauma. You know, I'm a guy that was in the Ranger Battalion, jumped out of a plane, blew my back out. Well, that's still trauma to a degree. And then the shit I did afterwards created more trauma. So, you know, to understand, like I did that for many, many years because I wanted so hard to live in that, you know, that soft community and grow up through there to be, again, a Green Beret or what have you. And so I always compared myself to these guys and like, you know, I'm worthless. Like I blew my back out. I can't be part of this. So I always compared. So to hear that from someone like him, it was almost like a breath of fresh air. Like he gets it. Like, don't compare yourself to other people's, you know, where they're at mentally in their life.
I'll tell you, like, so on Learn from People Who Lived It, we've probably talked to 60 plus people now, and their stories. And obviously as a psychiatrist, Dave, you've heard a million tales along the way. And as far as I can tell, comparing your pain and your trauma to somebody else, at best, the most useful piece of that is that it can possibly offer you some perspective. But I don't know if it's valuable for anything else other than to maybe just offer you a little perspective sometimes. Because my feeling is that it can be dangerous to compare because then you devalue what you're going through. And yeah, if somebody's got a compound fracture, that's different from a sprained ankle, but they both fucking hurt. So, I mean, you know, like give yourself some credit. Like your pain is real too.
Yeah, and there's no substitute for going through it. So if you can see what other people are struggling with and say, okay, well they've tried this, I haven't tried this, let me see if there's something there for me. You still have to walk through it. You still have to go through your own struggle. So comparing doesn't get you out of anything necessarily.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we went a little long today, but I appreciate the questions. I felt it was a good conversation, and we aim to be back here next Wednesday. As people come in and they watch this conversation throughout the week, if you want to leave any comments in the comment section, we'd be happy to tackle your questions next week. And listen, as much as I love shooting the breeze with these guys, we're absolutely here for you, and this is why we do it. And so if there's anything you're landing on or thinking about, please reach out to us and know that we'll do our best to kick it around in a meaningful way that is helpful to you guys. So any big plans for you two for the rest of the week?
Going to head up to Flagstaff. We're supposed to go golfing this weekend, but Flagstaff's been raining for a week and a half, and it looks like they're going to rain for another week and a half. So I don't know, some indoor miniature golf someplace, but guys weekend this weekend.
All right, cool. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, no big plans.
Good. Yeah, well, we're just, you see this hockey rink behind me. I put that up today because there's been some things that have been going on behind the scenes, but I accepted the role as the director of Desert Vista Hockey. And nice. So, my boys are both hockey players, and I'm gonna oversee the DV Hockey Club now in a way that I think is going to be super cool and exciting. And as a kid from Minnesota, I'm jacked up to have an opportunity to lead an organization into the promised land.
That's awesome.
You got to grow out your hockey hair.
Shit, I can't grow hair. I don't even think I've ever had to shave, Dave. I mean, are you kidding me? I just, that does not work. That does not work. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, listen, we'll let everybody run. Have a great night. Thank you so much for watching our stream. Don't forget to support Chad and Mental Joe Apparel and keep that whole thing going. And Dave's just over there collecting. He's got a GoFundMe account for his obsession. So good looking at that too. All right, take care, guys.
Have a good night.